Okay, it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the fourth meeting of the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee. The City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenni-Pequot and Attawandaron. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this shared territory. I'd also want to say the City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact sppc@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. I will start with disclosures of pecuniary interest. Does any colleagues have disclosures to make today? Okay, we have no consent items, no scheduled items. We have 3 items for direction. I will say the third item for direction has a staff presentation associated with it. So I guess my first question is, does anybody want to deal with 4.1 and 4.2 together, or would you like to deal with them separately? How about anybody who wants to deal with them separately, let me know now. You can still ask questions about them, but we'll maybe move a motion for 4.1 and 4.2 together. Okay, moved by Councillor Raman, seconded by Councillor Cuddy. Questions or comments on 4.1 or 4.2? 4.1 is the Residents' Satisfaction Survey. 4.2 is the semi-annual progress report and impact assessment for the 2020 to 2022 section of the strategic plan. Comments? Go ahead.
Questions?
Okay, questions. Go ahead, Councillor Pribble.
Through the chair to the staff, I have a question on page actually for Mr. Mathers. Page 238 in terms of the London creates supportive environment where entrepreneurs, businesses, and talent can thrive. And I have a question in terms of the targets, and currently they are stated as NA. And I just want to ask you if there are certain things, because of course we know how crucial your department is in terms of the growth of London, and targets are very important, as we know we stay, they keep us on track. Question one is kind of why they are not set as the targets, and second, are there anything that you need in terms of the council to have a support for us to keep moving forward? And I do believe we are on the right track, but I do believe that we can spin the wheel much faster. Is there any support that you need and to help you out to move forward? Thank you.
Mr. Mathers.
Through the chair, really appreciate the question. There's a few different initiatives that we've been working through. One is the streamlining initiative that's going to help us both have a really good way to describe and understand our processes, but also set those really good targets for the future. The next piece will then be, as part of the multi-year budget and the strategic plan, ensuring that we're having one that we've got appropriate metrics that everyone understands and everyone wants to move towards, and then also setting ourselves up to make sure that we have the appropriate resources to be able to deliver on those commitments. So as you're all probably aware, at the last SPPC meeting, we did bring, there was the thought of bringing forward this report that speaks about targets moving forward. So that's a report that we're going to be highlighting some of those needs, and that will be in February SPPC meeting. So there'll be more to come, and there also will be more built, and you'll see coming through the strategic plan process as well.
Councillor Pribble.
Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing those reports in January and February, and hopefully we'll be on track and move even more faster. Thank you.
Any other questions on 4.1 or 4.2? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to thank staff for the survey 4.1. Just having completed a campaign myself, I would quite agree with the 2 main issues that we found here in this survey. Number 1 being homelessness, and number 2 being transportation. It really, I quite agree from what I heard knocking at the door as well. I think it's also fair to say too, I appreciate that in the report, it speaks to 72% of residents that did fill out the survey filled out that they are white. And I think keeping that in mind would really adjust our numbers accordingly to the diversity of people and their concerns. Will only bring up those numbers higher when it comes to the items of concern that Londoners have. So I want to thank staff for, there's a lot of work that goes into this. It takes time and energy, and really appreciate the report. If I may, as well, just, we're on 4.2, which is the annual progress report and impact assessment. I think that's the one, if I may, just through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, just a comment on the report back, and in particular on items that we have not started. I know it's a small percentage, and I do want to, because it is a concern and a disappointment that we weren't able to get money in the budget for bringing Londoners back to the river, and I know we haven't started those projects, and I know that is, I guess, a further conversation, and maybe that's the question for you, Mr. Chair, to staff. Will items that have not been started, would they be up for conversations again going into our next budget?
I'm going to go to Ms. Livingston on that, and I think part of that will be when we talk about 4.3 as well.
Yes, and thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Certainly, if Council wished to bring back that discussion for the next strategic plan, that is where I would root the discussion. You'll hear me say in the presentation on the strategic planning process, the very direct linkage between the strat plan and the multi-year budget. And staff will know I'm very fond of saying if it's not in the strat plan, it doesn't go in the budget. And so if you're looking to have that action resourced in the future MYB, I would strongly recommend that it be rooted as a strategy in the upcoming strategic plan. Some of the important piece about the multi-year budget is it sets the pacing of the implementation of the strategic plan. So if Council chooses not to put resources towards it through the MYB, even though it's in the strat plan, then it doesn't get implemented.
Thank you.
Hey, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, and through the chair to the staff, this being my first time looking at the strategic plan in any detail and noticing that as of November 2022, we're showing only 1% caution. This is on page 57. And just wondering, like, given the issues that we're facing downtown and through our core areas and the concerns around homelessness, any advice to this council going forward as to how we can develop a strategic plan that maybe has more accountability or shows us more clearly what, like, I'm just wondering too, with there being so much detail here, whether sometimes we lose track of the bigger issues in having so much detail here, or any suggestions you've got?
Ms. Livingston.
Yes, and through you, Your Worship, it's a very good question. The accountability on the delivery of the strategic plan happens in 3 ways each year. The first is semi-annual progress reports. So we report out twice a year to Council on, did we do the actions that you have directed us to do in the time frame that you've asked us to do them? So we report publicly twice a year on that. We report annually on the performance. Did we reach the targets and the metrics that have been requested? And then each year we also do a report to the community, which gives a bit more of the narrative. However, your question is about, with all the mounds of paper, is there a better way? And through this strategic planning process that you're embarking on this evening, we would suggest that some of the continuous improvement methodology is to elevate some of the strategies so that there aren't quite so many, and to put the metrics against the expected results versus against each strategy. We think that will make it a much more manageable in terms of receiving the information, and also in terms of how the public may be able to follow on.
Go ahead. Other questions? Councillor Frank.
Thank you, and through the chair to staff. I'm just wondering, so there's a variety of different strategies that are mentioned in here and with a deadline of the end of next year. I'm just wondering, for example, like the Climate Emergency Action Plan, the Urban Agriculture Strategy, the Invasive Species Strategy, are those going to be coming back to council sometime next year for another set of eyes?
Ms. Livingston.
Through you, Your Worship, you'll see a number of strategies that are actually annual. That's why it has the date of 2023, because it's occurring each and every year. And you're stealing all my thunder on my presentation tonight, but you'll see that a number of initiatives actually carry through the life of many strategic plans, but council will wish to be deliberate in setting your strategic plan that is a continuation, but that's why you see the 2023 date. Either it's an annual activity or it's carrying past the life of this current plan.
Councillor Pribble.
Through the chair to the staff, and maybe for Mrs. Barbone, I have a question in terms of the financial and this strategic, but maybe more on the financial. I know we were part of I'm a true believer in benchmarking and, you know, being the best out of the best. And I think we were part of, I think it's called MBN Canada, and we participate in that in terms of the benchmarking. And I heard that potentially we are not anymore, and I was just curious if we are gonna replace it with something, or if there's still gonna be potential in terms of the benchmarking to see how we are comparing with other municipalities.
Ms. Livingston.
Through you, Your Worship, municipal benchmarking is extremely important to us, so we understand where we are on each of our services. And yes, there is an organization called MBN Canada that we have participated in for a number of years. However, a number of municipalities have stepped away from participating, particularly Ontario municipalities have stepped away from participating in MBN Canada, and we conducted a review this year. It's extremely heavy from a task and staff time perspective, and ultimately questionable value in terms of cost-benefit analysis. So we are stepping away from MBN Canada. However, we are undertaking a review to determine what other municipal benchmarking processes that we can participate in. It's extremely important for us. Many of the service areas have their own benchmarking processes for those specific services, but we're interested in trying to understand a more global one. City of Toronto is participating in a couple, and so we're looking at that to see what other places we may be able to have a better use of our time and resources.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions on these two items? Okay, it's moved and seconded. Yep, moved and seconded. If there are no further questions or debate, then I'm going to open this for voting.
Councillor Van Meerbergen. Closing the vote, the motion's passed 14-0.
Okay, item 4.3 is the first step in developing the 2023 to 2027 strategic plan. This is the proposed approach and context setting. This does have a staff presentation associated with it, so I will start off by going directly to Ms. Livingston for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oh, there it is. Good evening, and we're really pleased to be launching with you this evening Council's strategic plan process for the 2023-2027 strat plan. It's always an exciting time, and from a staff perspective, we look forward to supporting you.
1 second, Ms. Livingston. I'm just going to remind colleagues, you can push the the button if you want to switch to the presentation view on your screens.
So we look forward to supporting you through the development of your strategic plan. I would suggest that my presentation this evening with my colleague, Ms. Wilcox, is similar to that you received last week in terms of the tabling of the budget. This is sharing some information with you, seeking your support for the process we're suggesting we can support you through. But really, the work of the strategic planning begins in January. So while we've provided you with a mountain of information, it was really just to provide it to you now so you have time to review it and consider it in advance of January when you begin in earnest the discussions about what you'd like to see happen over the next 4 years. So it's not working. We'll just tag team. Okay, so what I'm hoping to talk to you about this evening is just outlining the purpose of the strategic plan, recommend to you a proposed approach, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Wilcox, who can, at a high level, review some of the background contextual information that you may find useful as you think about developing the strategic plan. Next slide. So just to reiterate that really what the strategic plan does for council is articulate your shared vision, mission, and strategic areas of focus or areas of priority. And that it's critical from the perspective of that it guides really the work of this council and the work of civic administration that we will do on your behalf and with you over the next 4 years. As I mentioned in answering some of the questions, what's also very important about the strategic plan is it is very deliberately connected to the multi-year budget and the technology investment strategy. So not only does it guide the work that all of us do together, it guides the investment of your resources, whether that be financial, people, or technology. So in terms of the council's strategic plan, as was already raised in one of the questions, there are many initiatives that have been started by previous councils that carry on past the life of this current council into the future for some time. There are initiatives that were started in previous councils and will conclude in this period of time, and there will be initiatives that this council begins and that may extend past the life of this particular council. So the way we think about this strategic plan is that it is really the 4-year period across a number of initiatives, providing that continuity for the community, but also it really is an opportunity for this council to identify the very clear priorities where you want time, energy, and resources to be directed. Staff began our work at the beginning of this year, actually, to begin all the background research, initial engagement with the community in order to support the development of your strategic plan. And there are some principles that we set out to help guide some of our work in getting to this point. The first, of course, is you're not starting from scratch. There have been a couple of robust strategic plans that previous councils have established, and you've seen some of the work in the previous slide that has resulted from that and may carry forward. The other component is that it's important that the strat plan be comprehensive. It is a large organization. We deliver many services to the community. And so it needs to be able to reflect that breadth and depth, but also bring to it strategic direction and focus in terms of the priorities where you would like to see action happen. We've undertaken a commitment in the development of the work that we've done so far in terms of equity and inclusion to our thinking about some of the things we'll be tabling for your consideration, but also in terms of how we approach the engagement. And that is in addition to our approach around fiscal stewardship and sustainability, an important component of making a plan doable, and also that the decisions we provide you information and evidence to support your decision making. And as I've already said a few times, it's important that this plan drive your decisions around what winds up in the multi-year budget and ultimately our technology investment strategy. So the proposed approach and timing that we'd like to table with you today it's really a top-down, bottom-up approach. So some of you will be familiar with this graphic, but essentially the top-down is council makes every single decision about what will be in the plan. So council will set the vision, mission, values. You'll determine the areas of focus or the otherwise known as strategic priorities. You will confirm what the outcomes and expected results are. What is the desired end state against those priorities? Expected results are how will you know it when you see it? What is the change that we're looking for? And then the strategies are those actions, and the metrics will be how do we measure progress against those expected results. Council will make decisions at each and every part. The bottom-up piece is staff will bring things forward for your consideration. As you change that, give new direction, we alter it, we revise it based on your direction, and we bring it back to you for your final decision-making. So it is a top-down, bottom-up approach to ultimately achieving a plan that you are happy with. In terms of the steps that we would look to support you through, it begins today with the essentially determining the process and providing you some of the background contextual information. That gives you some time to be able to review that information in advance of your first discussion in January. In January, that's where we will we'll be supporting you through conversation. I hope you find it good. We're thinking about doing something fun and interactive. I know. Through conversation, through vision, mission, values, strategic areas of focus, outcomes, and expected results. So really setting the overall direction for that. Based on what you do in that meeting and give us direction for changes, we'll turn those around, bring those back to you at the beginning of February. At that time, we would also then table the strategies, the actions to achieve those outcomes and expected results. You'll have an opportunity to discuss those, bring back, and any change you wish, bring that back for the end of February. In addition to any revised strategies, we would also be providing 2 additional pieces of information at that end of February meeting that we think would be helpful as you make some final decisions around the strategies. And that's the order of magnitude costing of what those strategies, whether new resources are required. I think that's an important piece of information, and we'll also be providing you with some recommendations around the metrics against the expected results. All that culminates in a public participation meeting on March 8th. Where you will hear final comment from the public on the plan. I'll talk to you about the engagement that will occur throughout this entire period because there's many intersection points. So you'll receive the final comment, give us final direction at that PPM, and then we move to table a final plan for your consideration at the end of March, looking to have council support that for early April. I will say that we have a on-hold, if needed, date for later in April. Should there be some late emerging items or considerations that may affect the timing of a early April finalization of a plan. So we do have that if needed. Why is it important to have the plan completed by April? Is because the multi-year budget process begins at the end of April. It is a very robust, detailed and extensive process, and in order to be in a position to table an MYB for you by the end of the year, we need to begin that work at the end of April, early May. So it just flows from one point to the other. In terms of the public engagement, so those are the major milestone activities that would occur in each of your SPPC meetings. Throughout that process, there will be public engagement, and we bring the results of that public engagement to each of those meetings so that you have that continuous flow of information and can use it as another additional piece of information as you make your decisions. So beginning immediately, we will be posting all of the resources that you've received this evening as the background information on our Get Involved site so that the public can see it and provide any comment or information to you. We will also begin immediate engagement through Get Involved on the existing vision, mission, and values of the current plan. so the public can look at them and provide commentary. We will provide any information we receive from now up until your January 11th meeting through the Get Involved site so that you have some of that information as you begin to have that discussion on January 11th. In terms of from January 4th to February 7th, that is where if you make changes or create a new vision statement or make changes to the mission or values, strategic areas of focus, we would then post those and seek public input through the Get Involved site so that when you come back to discuss those again on February 7th, again, we're feeding back to you what we've received through the Get Involved site. The third phase is really focused on hearing from the public around all of that, but also the strategies. So the strategies will be tabled on February 7th. You then have an opportunity to hear from the public in a couple of ways. One, through the Get Involved site, all that information will be there and people can provide their comments. But also we have found that the month of February is often a very good time for councillors to hold individual town halls or ward meetings. We would provide supports to you to be able to have a conversation with your constituents about the strategic plan, any of the components in it, in fact, including the strategies, and we can support you to undertake that during the month of February or early March if you wish. And then, of course, all of that culminates in a PPM on March 8th, where there's final comment from the public on any and all of the components of the strategic plan. So as you're doing your work from meeting to meeting, the public engagement occurs, and we feed into each of those meetings what we're hearing from the public on each of those components. So you have it as a part of the information when you're making your decisions. So that is the process that we are proposing to support you to be able to develop your strategic plan over the next couple of months. And I'll just turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Wilcox, to, at a high level, walk you through some of the background context-setting resources we've provided.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. So I'll just provide a very brief overview of some of the background documents that are included in your package, and these are intended to support you in your thinking as you prepare for that first conversation and dig into the strategic plan on January 11th. The first that I'll highlight is the community profile. So that's attached as Appendix A in your package. This includes population level data on demographic, economic, and social trends in London. And you'll notice there is an index included against the data. So the index shows how similar or how different London's data is against the provincial average. So where the score of 100 means that the data is equal. The resident satisfaction survey, which was included under a separate cover on your agenda, is also a key piece of information to consider. And we've pulled, just for ease of reference, a couple of components from that survey. So these include the top of mind issues and the 4-year priorities from that survey. And again, the full results are available through the other report. The third piece of information is the summary of themes from the Council-elect engagement conversations. So as you recall, Civic Administration met with each of the members of Council shortly following the election to begin to understand the top issues that you heard during the election period. So this document provides a summary of those key themes based on those discussions. The next piece of information is the PEST analysis, and that stands for Political, Economic, Social, and Technological. This really provides a summary of the external factors that may help or hinder the business and services of the City of London, and this was prepared by our internal enterprise-wide leadership team, as well as the leads from the agencies, boards, and commissions of the City. And lastly are a number of documents from the 2019 to 2023 strategic plan. This includes the semi-annual progress report, again, available through separate cover. There are links to the annual performance reports which were completed in 2020 and 2021, as well as the 2020 to 2022 impact assessment. Each of these reports serve a distinct purpose, and they are also part of our accountability and transparency framework to report to Council and the community on our strategic plan. And that concludes the presentation, so I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you through the chair to staff. Just wondering, I saw February 8th to March 8th, we're working on outcomes, expected results, and strategies. And is that where that completes and then the action details come later from staff?
Thank you, and through the chair. So we're hoping that by the beginning of February, we'll have a relatively good sense of the strategic areas of focus, outcomes, and expected results. And we'll have tabled the strategies, which are the actions to achieve those results, at that same meeting. And then you may give us different direction on those strategies. We'll try and turn those around for the end of February, along with some additional pieces of information. The very specific detailed implementation plans that staff undertake to deliver on those strategies come through the development of the MYB, where we determine the pacing and specific targets that we're achieving, and then that drives our specific work plans.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair one more time. Coming to this with fresh eyes, so forgive me for the questions, but the expected results are very general, like when I look through, and I just wondered if there's a reason for that versus using specific measurable results in terms of percentages or numbers right in the larger expected result?
Through the chair, so that's a learning from the past plan to, well, actually it's an evolution. We didn't used to have expected results at all. And so what we're going to be recommending to you is still the language, but more specific. And then the metric, instead of being at the level of strategy, we're going to recommend metric at the level of expected results so we can see it very directly, the connection between the two. And then the strategies are actions to be able to deliver on that.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, one more time, just again, in terms of really wanting to make sure that we're held accountable to the things that really matter. And I understand the breadth and depth of the organization and the need to cover all of it. Is there any thought, or have you tried before, maybe weighting some of the top priorities more so that, again, in the results, those key components are weighted more in the performance results?
Through your worship, we're in the hands of council on how you wish to reflect your priorities. So what you'll see come forward from staff is a recommendation of the areas, and then which we've tried to do based on what we heard from you of your conversations with Londoners, what we've seen from all our background material, and then tried to be very crisp. Hopefully you will see that around the outcomes and what those priorities will be. So we're not trying to boil the ocean on everything, but trying to be very clear and targeted. But we're in your hands on whether you feel it hits the mark when we table it with you in January.
Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair. I just wanted to ask some questions about the way the public can voice their opinions, or where they'd like to see us, or what they'd like to see us include on the strat plan and everything like that. So I know that we have the Get Involved site where they can put in their input, and I see that there is a public participation meeting. What other forms or ways would the public be able to engage just on the strategy planning moving forward?
Through your worship, one of the other ways that has occurred in the past are when councillors hold town halls or ward meetings. Some do that, as I suggested, in the month of February, when there can be time dedicated to that. Others have conversations throughout the period of time with constituents. We will support you with tools and materials to do that, but that is another way that the public can be engaged.
Good? Go ahead.
All right, so I have the town hall, so get involved, and I have had some constituents come into my office and kind of tell me where they would like, just some ideas that they'd like to see brought forward, so that's what I was really asking. So that's what I'll probably have to do, town halls, send people to get involved and just continue with meetings, and then I'll bring it forward at council when the time comes.
Go ahead. Anything to add?
Through your worship, I'm just being reminded, we also have other avenues where people can access, whether it's through the strat plan email, or there's a phone number, I believe, as well. So there's multiple avenues that people can get to provide information in. And again, we provide you with summaries of that information at each touch point as you're working through the process, and we will provide resources for you to support you in whatever way you're engaging with your constituents.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to confirm, you will be giving me the multiple avenues that I could hand out to constituents so they can reach out and give their input?
The short answer is yes.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. So I've been through the strategic planning process a few times, and I know there's different ways that we can look at this. How blue sky do you see the thinking on our strategic plan? Do you want the public to engage on ideas, aspirations, motivations, things they want to see, as a broader, bigger vision, or are we going to give them specific areas and say, here are the areas that we're thinking of, and is it less blue sky and more focused? I guess is my question.
Go ahead.
Through you, your worship, I think the best answer I can provide is both and. And the both and is that the vision statement actually gives an opportunity to articulate the hopes and aspirations of what people would like London to be in that sentence and the statement of values. The and is, I believe, the specificity and clear prioritization comes through the areas of focus and the outcomes that you're wanting to see happen, and then greater specificity about the particular actions. So if there's a particular strategy you want to see in place, that's where the focus can happen. So I think it's a bit of both.
Follow up?
Thank you. I'm thinking through how we do our strategic plan based on the level of participation that we had in the municipal election. How do we inspire? How do we get people to get behind a vision, a mission, and a plan for this city that takes them in a direction that they feel inspired and motivated to go in? Where I'm trying to wrap my head around is how big that has to be and what kind of engagement targets we'd be looking at to say that we did it right. So do you have any thoughts on that at all? Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Livingston.
Through you, your worship, one of the pieces that we really tried to strengthen in bringing forward information to you this time was reflecting the very significant input that Londoners have already had into this strategic plan or the thinking about it, and that is the conversations that all of you had throughout the election period. This is why we wanted to spend time with you to understand the themes that you heard, the priorities that each of you heard, and tried to reflect that back in terms of the themes. So I think that gives a very good grounding. You were out there for months talking to Londoners about what was important to them and the priorities that they wanted you as a council to focus on. So that's what we've tried to reflect back. What this gives is an opportunity to affirm when you land on the 6 or whatever number it is of priority areas that you wish to work on. This gives an opportunity to affirm that again with Londoners, and again through multiple avenues. as we've mentioned already, to try and make sure that council is moving in the direction that the community is wishing you to do so.
Other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, and through the chair. When you talked about the other plans that we have inherited from past council, given how much the world has changed in terms of COVID and economic outlook, how much of that inheritance are we locked into and how much is open for discussion?
Ms. Livingston.
Through you, Your Worship, there are some plans that are a given. The London Plan has been enacted and is established, and we are working within it, although we know, well understand that the housing world is changing rapidly. So some of the contextual pieces we adjust as we go. Some of the plans that were on that slide, you will see an update of early on. For example, the Parks and Rec Master Plan, which gives council an early opportunity to say what should be different or adjust. Of course, each of those will then have an impact in the multi-year budget that will have to be reflected. But I think that's the process, right? As some of these come forward, some of the other plans are in their very early stages, such as the consultation for the Master Mobility Plan is underway. So there's lots of opportunity for this council to shape the direction of that particular plan. So I think between updates and new plans, there's lots of opportunity for council, this council, to be very clear about your priorities and the work you wish to have happen.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Trossau.
Comment. One thing that's changed since the last time council went through this exercise is the declaration of a climate emergency and follow-up documents in that regard. And this council is not, I hope, going to be revisiting points that were made in that declaration or in the follow-up documents, which were very good. People are waiting to see how we're going to implement that. And I think that this exercise is going to be a test of how committed this council is to things like saying there's a climate emergency or there's a housing crisis. And I think that's where the accountability is going to come from. Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, I'm going to get a motion on the floor, and then I will make some comments. So if you see the motion that we're considering is essentially a Part A and a Part B. Part A is to receive the report and information that's been provided. Part B is to essentially endorse the approach and timelines that staff have suggested in the report. So is there a mover for that? Councillor Lehman, seconder. Councillor Trossau. Any discussion on that? Okay, I'm going to make a few comments. I'll just, with your indulgence, just make a couple of comments from the chair. I will say to colleagues, first off, let me thank staff for not only the work that they've done in this particular report, but the many, many, many hours of work that it will take for us to develop the final strategic plan. And to my colleagues, this is really going to be our plan. So there's always the hesitancy to say, what do you think, staff? What should go in it? But at the end of the day, this is something that we take ownership over. This will be a way that we are held to account for the work we do over the next 4 years. This will be a document that will shape our discussions around budget and resources and limited resources and where we want to prioritize them. And so it's a pretty important process, and I would strongly encourage you to do what Councillor Ferreira suggested and take the opportunity, although we just ran an election and knocked on thousands of doors, to engage with your constituents on the strategic plan and its development, not just through the opportunities that staff will outline through the process formally, but through the networks you have, the contact lists you have, the community associations that you can engage with, and cast a wide net so that we all bring those ideas back to this council so that we can get this particular plan right. It will be something that at the end of the day we'll all have input into, much like the budget. There'll be all things that we like, there'll be all things that we maybe want to do a little bit differently, but this will be our collective approach to how we move the city forward for the next number of years. So pretty important process that we're embarking on today. As I know, we have a number of new counselors and some who've only gone through this process once. There's always room for improvement in a process. I know our staff are completely open to suggestions as we navigate through it. And of course, if you have any questions about how things have gone in the past or how you'd like to raise them in the future, those are all things that can be discussed, of course. So, so I'm very excited about this process. This is a process that I personally have used in my time on council to get a number of things accomplished and done. I remember pitching a few things very early on back in, I think it was 2015, that actually came to fruition, and it's nice to see a document that you get to shape, that you get to have a say in, and that ultimately leads to positive change within the city. So this will be an exciting time for everybody, and I encourage you to take your time to thoughtfully deliberate and bring great ideas. And I also will say there will be differences of opinion on focuses, on additions, and I think so far we've navigated through all the discussions we've had respectfully with an open mind and the utmost respect for the opinions around this table, and as we drive towards a consensus on a very important document. So I look forward to the work ahead, and if there are no other comments, we can open this for voting.
Councillor Trosso?
I'll vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion's carried, 14-0.
Thank you for that. We're on to deferred matters and additional business. I don't know if anybody has any. No? Seeing none, then a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Ferreira. All those in favor by hand of adjournment?
That motion's carried.
We are adjourned. Thank you for your time today.